when you run an open source project and you say, hey, that sounds like a great idea. Why don't you give us a PR? Sometimes people do, and you should probably look at those PRs. Let's mash on that.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Asp.Net Monsters. I'm here with James Chambers, and we are going to be looking at a pull request for GenFu.
And I'm here with Dave Paquette.
Right. I'm Dave.
Simon is, that's the live stream from the inside of his camper. They're without power right now. So, hi, Simon. Dave, we started, GenFu is kind of like, I would say it's in a way, it might even be the start of the monsters in some ways. Hey,
It is in some ways our origin story, right?
Yeah. Today we have over 1.7 million downloads of GenFu and over 850,000 installs of the last version that we released almost 2 years ago. And we're averaging over 600 downloads a day.
Oh.
So when we get pull requests, we should be a little more attentive as to what's going on and be managing it. So we have Experiandry.
Yes, Andre, I think is his name.
Andre, okay, has added a pull request, which is doing something that we actually have talked about doing for a while, and importing the project over, and has created pull request number 166. Now there's almost 400 commits and 17 contributors to the project. So GenFu is it's still plugging along, and this latest pull request came about 10 days ago. So we just wanted to kind of do a check-in and remind people what GenFu is, and give that a go. Did you want to maybe start, Dave, with doing a quick little GenFu project just so people can see what it is, and then we can use that and try and maybe upgrade the package and stuff like that afterwards. We'll see how far we can get.
I just cloned the repo here, so let me just... Oh, wait, you mean like create a brand new project with GenFu?
Yeah, let's just add it from a package manager to the existing version, just so we can quickly show them. Now, we have demonstrated GenFu before, and I'm completely going, we have no script whatsoever today. So if there's questions about what the conversation is today or whatever, make sure you leave them down in the comments, or check out the GenFu library, which is super easy to find on NuGet, GenFu. And then and you can actually genfu.io is running, so you can go there and
I don't think it is, because we need to fix some DNS records on that.
Oh, okay. Well, we will. I mean, we should do that too. Maybe that's another episode. At any rate, it's used for generating sample data, and it does a pretty good job on it too. So whenever you're ready, Dave, we'll launch a...
All right, so I just did a file new project, just a simple, in this case, console app. And from there, I'm going to go manage NuGet packages.
Did you want to share your screen?
Oh, goodness. I do want to share my screen, yes.
So we're 251 episodes in. We
still struggling with the basics.
We're still struggling. Every one of us. It's perfect.
All right.
Okay.
So this is just a new .NET 6 console app. So it's just like a couple lines of code, nothing much there. And I just right-clicked on my project and did manage NuGet packages, and from there I can search for GenFu. And there it is. It's just the GenFu project with the nice little logo there, and I'm going to hit install. And even though this is an older version, it's been a couple years since we've published a new version, it's still targeting like older versions of .NET. It of course still works in the newer versions of .NET because we were targeting a version of .NET Standard that's supported basically everywhere. But we're also supporting it was like the minimal viable one that we could do. But we're also supporting like some really old versions of the .NET framework that are no longer supported as of today, so we don't really need to be doing that anymore. Right. And we can probably, I'm hoping that PR resolves some of those things for us.
It does. It addresses it, yeah.
Cool. Okay, so now that GenFu is in here, I can use it. So the idea is, and kind of the reason we created it is because we were always doing like different demos at conferences and stuff, and we'd have these classes like a person class or a blog post class or like a news article class, and we wanted to have an easy way to fill it with some sample data so that we could show it on the screen and it didn't just look like
John Smith
ugly.
copy and pasted
Yeah,
100 times, right? Yeah.
looked a little more realistic. So I'm just going to do like a string, public string first name and last name here, just for something really simple. And so the idea is we can generate a list of those or a single instance of those using GenFu. And the way we do that is by doing a dot, and that should autocomplete. A is just an alias to our GenFu, static GenFu class. And then I can tell it I want a list of person, and I can tell it how many of them I want. So let's say I want 50 people. So there's my peeps. And then I'm going to want to write them out or something just to show that they're there. What would I do? Maybe a for each. I'm loving the auto completion here today.
Man alive, it's just like spot on, hey?
It is like pretty close. Anyway, it's
I'm
saving me
looking
some
forward to
time.
the day when we can just, maintain current bill rates, but just keep hitting tab to write code.
We're pretty close to there.
We're getting there.
So
We're
when
getting
I
there.
run this now, well, I'll put a breakpoint in here too, but I should get a list of people that have like first names and last names that look realistic, and then it's just going to dump them out on the console for me. So here I am in my breakpoint. If I go to locals, we can see that I don't have anything yet because I haven't actually hit that point. Okay, so now we have our peeps. I can kind of drill into those and see that there's first name, last name for each of them that looks pretty realistic. And if
Yeah,
I just let
and
that run,
it should dump it out to the console for us. And
yep.
so the beautiful thing about this is if you're doing something like the canonical example that we always use is like if you're doing something like sorting on an address book or something, none of that works if it's John Smith 100 times, right? This
Mm-hmm.
at least looks like real data. And we do that really simply. If you dive into it, it's literally just we have a bunch of text files in there and they get compiled into the resource and we randomly select things. We try to line it up with property names that are common or known. And then there's a whole layer of configuration that you can do on top of that using the configuration. We have a class called the configurator. And behind the scenes, you can use you can configure a person or whatever to set proper to be a specific inside of specific things or using lists of pre-existing data that you're supplying on your own. Um, so here we're going to configure a
Oh,
person.
I'm not using it properly, but
Oh,
it's
just
configure
yeah,
like this, and then we tell it how to fill each individual property. So I can say things
right.
like p dot first name dot with. I can tell it to like pick from a random list, but if that happened to be an integer, I would get different options here for how I can configure it.
Right. Or a date. You can set up limits and
Yeah.
things like that. It makes it easy to set up birthdays or conferences that are happening in the future or flights or something like that. Right. So, yeah. Okay. So that's what GenFu is and what it does. And one of the things that, Dave, that you spoke to is that right now we're still targeting some stuff that's actually fallen off of the support radar and actually has introduced some security vulnerabilities for us as a
Yeah.
result. And so this one that Andres put in has is kind of given that. So if we pop over to the files changed, this is actually a pretty straightforward, and I really appreciate it. Actually, when I reviewed this, I actually went by commits, and it was very easy to see what was happening in each of the commits if you wanted to look at it that way. So
Ah, nice. Yes.
yeah, this so in terms of like contributing to an open source community, this is like the ideal use case for not use case, but the ideal contribution. There's a clear title. There's separate commits. There's minimal changes. There's not a wall of red anywhere except where it's appropriate. So, for example, with the updated Git ignore file for Visual Studio, so this is actually like a really great commit, and we're super appreciative of that. It's a little bit small for me on my side, but if you wanted to start going through it if you go back to that commits list, and we can kind of ignore the git ignore because it's kind of
Yeah.
the thing, but that everyone would expect to see if they're jumping onto a repo. But in here, implemented struct default value checking. So in this particular case,
well, sorry, this commit was the removing all targets except .NET Standard 2.
oh, is that what it was? Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Okay,
So that was the
so
next one in the list.
right. So this is, project level changes or
Yeah.
whatever, bringing us down to .NET 6, which is really what we want to support kind of going forward.
So I guess there's a couple things here, like in the build props, it's setting the language version, or it added a build prop setting the language version 10, so we can use some of the newer C# language features, which is nice. I
Right.
don't think that would be a problem. Here we're updating our HTML helpers project. The SDK that we target for that changes with this version of .NET, and then we change the target framework to .NET 6. So again, seems fine. Really see any issues there. It does remove some of those dependencies that you were saying we had some security vulnerabilities around, so that's good.
Yeah, and then it does. It looks like probably just the way the Visual Studio itself works with item groups, but it moved the reference for the GenFu CS project down to a new items group. It looks like as well, but that's just internal CS proj cruft. We don't really need to worry about it. We're not seeing anything suspicious there. So
right. This next file is a launch settings JSON, which is new, and that's fine. That's just telling.
Kind of speaks to the fact that we haven't maybe updated this in a while, more than anything. Yeah.
And then we're just updating usings, probably because there's default usings now, so we don't need those in all the files. So that's cool.
Yep. Some white space cleanup.
Yeah, one of the things I like to do is hide white space sometimes if there's a lot of that, but it doesn't look like there's enough of it here to worry too much.
Make a difference, yeah.
And then this is changed here to use a different serializer. Where are we here? What file are we in? The home controller on GenFu Web. So that's our sample app.
Right.
That should be fine. And then again in GenFu.web CS proj, changing the target framework to .NET 6. So these are projects, or this particular project, GenFu.web, is just our documentation and advertising page. Basically, it's not actually part of the NuGet package that gets shipped out. So
right. So minimal impact zero impact to anybody outside of
to anybody using the package.
Right. And then web startup, same deal here.
Actually, it looks like just white space. And then changes to the solution file. I'm never too worried about looking at, because that's managed by Visual Studio and not super human readable as far as file formats go. It's just a bunch of GUIDs typically, but looks like included a couple files like the README and the build props file as solution items. Seems easy enough.
Okay.
And this is white space again.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we have something new. No, that's white space again.
For me, looking at it, the code is actually behind the video of me, so I can't see exactly what's behind line 4748.
Interesting. What now?
Oh yeah, that works. Okay, so
I'm actually just gonna resize that too.
Sure. So we're getting the base info.
Yeah. So what's going on here? Sorry, I'll stop scrolling around.
So while any, we were, what were we doing there? X name is equal to property name, and base type is not equal to type of object. And that was changed to, so extracting the base type out into a variable first, I guess, and then getting properties of the property, like of the object, rather than operating, like looping over the object. Is that what we're doing there? Any?
Yeah, I'm not sure why that changed.
Pull the base type info out.
The base type, and we were calling get properties. I wonder if this was an API change or something on in the reflection stuff.
Right. Okay. So there's the base. Previously, we were getting the base type off of the type info. We're still doing that, and then we say that's the base type, and then var base type info is equal to get base type dot get type info. Whereas before we were kind of navigating through the base type get properties any piece. It seems to be the same. While base type info get properties.
We've introduced this. But then we're never setting base type info to anything. I'm actually not convinced with this particular line of code. This might be something we investigate a little further.
Sure.
I feel like that's a change in the functionality. And this has to do with how we we go up the inheritance chain to find the properties that it might implement to fill them. So we're not just filling like the properties that are on the person
Yeah.
class, but if person inherits from something else and it has properties on it, we fill those too.
Right. Okay, so
So
let's actually back out of this commit because there was a change in the other in one of the other commits as well that was pretty. Oh, it might actually be represented here because it's aggregating, right? So
yeah, we're
okay,
just looking at the one commit, but maybe it gets changed too down
yeah. So
further.
let's go down to the implemented default value. Oh wait, that's the one that you're on.
No, I'm on removed all
Removed.
targets.
Okay, let's go to the default value check one.
Okay. Hmm. Okay. Or should we look at the aggregate?
Let's maybe look at the aggregate and see if we
Okay.
can get a full picture here.
So I'll show all changes. I'm going to
Okay.
hide the white space just to
Yep. Yep.
reduce the amount we need to look at. Okay, so this
Okay.
stuff we looked at, I'm going to check it off because we don't need to look at it again.
Yeah.
Launch settings
One
is
second.
fine. Namespaces, white
White
space,
space,
namespaces.
namespace,
This was all good.
project, startup white
Startup
space.
was good. Solution file was fine. Okay, so default value checker changed.
Okay.
So one of the things that he was trying to accomplish here was being able to also fill property, in addition to properties, I guess, also fields, which we weren't doing. So previously we were taking in a property info and it only worked for like properties that we could fill. And then we were checking the default value there. And
Right.
now
Okay.
it's changed to member info, which is more generic. And we check both properties and fields to see if either of them are filled. So here we check for property. Oh, we're using a switch statement. Okay, so it's checking if the member info is a property, then check the property. If it's a field, check the field. That's kind of neat. I haven't
Nice.
used this syntax a whole lot, but yeah, that's the newer version of the switch statement. One of the things we get to use now because it's on C
Yeah.
Sharp 10.
Yeah. Okay.
So then that gets us our value. And then based on the value, we decide was this a default value or not, or had it already been filled. So the rest of the logic should be pretty similar. We've changed again to a C Sharp 10 style there with value is null.
Right. It looks like just simplifying the return rather than returning false, just returning the comparison,
Okay.
which I'm probably fine with. Um, Yeah, I think that one might be like. Do you have a preference on that? Like, I mean, part of me likes the return false.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's more clear with return false because of what the if statement is. Like we've already, well,
we're in effect returning, like it's returning the same thing. It's
it
just rather
is.
than, yeah. I mean,
I
I'm
don't.
not going to lose sleep over it if we change that.
I probably would have preferred to leave it as false because we're doing a bunch of extra casting that we didn't need to do too, with the and extra comparisons that we didn't need to do. But I'm not like I don't have a really strong feeling about it.
Maybe it might be worth setting up some performance stuff to.
That's
I
it.
mean,
That would be nice. Yeah.
after this, we can do that as a separate
Yeah.
thing or aspect really quickly.
Yeah. I
Okay,
agree.
so generally speaking, I'm okay with that. The question would be is that with the extra casting, if we're returning, if somebody's trying to build a list of 100,000, are we, um, or 1 million records? Like I've done that doing order history,
Mm-hmm.
generating 1 million records to test performance on a database. So that's a
Yeah, that's something we should check later on.
okay. So is default struct. So this is a new method. That must be used in that switch part that's checking for fields.
Is default enum might be used somewhere else. It is public. No, it's internal, but it might be used somewhere else in the object.
Right,
So
right.
we'll come back to that and have a look when we download the code, maybe.
So this is the one that we were looking at before, right? Where
Yeah.
okay,
So this, my concern is that it's possible that we're going to miss properties of base types on base types. I'm not sure that I'm reading it properly though, but I feel like we might be missing something there. So we'll test that. We'll see if there's a unit test that tests it.
okay, okay.
We still have Angela namespaces? Neat.
So Angela Smith was the original name of GenFu. So it's kind of odd to see Angela in there, to be honest, because I thought we changed almost all of that. There must be some. We're gonna have to do a find in files and look for Angela in there. So, for those who don't know, Angela is the name of my wife, and Smith is the most common last name in North America. So that's how that library originally came about. But we changed it during a codeathon at an MVP summit to be GenFu. So
This looks like it's just extracting the type info into its own variable, which is fine.
yes,
And
and then using type info methods. Okay. What's the is special name? I actually don't recall what that was doing. Do you remember what that was?
I don't know what his special name is. That's on type info is special name.
Huh. Thank you.
Yeah, oh, weird.
I'm going to talk to someone at Microsoft about that.
Yeah, you should. Huh,
Okay.
that's not very useful.
Do you know what I feel like happened there? Was I think we ran into something and like David Fowler came over and he was like, "Here, just do this,"
Probably
and
the code
it
whisperer.
probably fixed something. Um,
Okay, so this csproj file, the next one, genfu.csproj, is the one where we're actually building the NuGet package from. So here now we're dropping some of those old .NET Standard versions and the full
right.
framework versions
Okay.
in support
So
of just .NET Standard 2.0, which is fine for like going forward if somebody still needs to use .NET 4.5 or whatever they can target. They can just pull down the old version of the package. Generate documentation file. Okay.
Sure.
And we updated to version 2 of the assembly. Yeah. We want to call it a version 2.
I thought version 2 is going to be when we fixed all of our static stuff and everything.
Yeah, thinking maybe we just
Uh,
make this like a 1.7. I don't know if that's really semantic versioning, but
7 is probably fine.
let's do 1.7. So what I did there is just suggested a line change, and then we can come back and accept that, add it as another commit to this branch. Other than that, we're dropping all these conditionals. Yeah, we had all these conditional package references depending on what version of the
Right.
framework we were. So it's really
Yep.
nice to drop that and have it just really so much simpler now. And then our test project we're updating to .NET 6 as well, which makes sense in just updating the package references for all the test runners and test SDKs. And that's it.
And then that's it. Okay, so maybe what we should do is pull down the branch and build it and run the tests.
Yes, let's do that.
Okay. And that'll allow us to quickly, if we don't have it, we can also write a quick test, have set up a human base class and then have person inherit from it, or have Homo sapien base class and have person inherit from it, and check to
Yeah,
see if that. I don't recall what's there for tests. It has been a while, so
it has been, yes. Okay, so I used the GitHub CLI to check out the PR. And I just copied the command here right from the pull request, pasted that into my command line, and now I have that branch here with the code from that PR, and I can open it locally and we can test it out. So I should be able to, somewhere in here, we have a solution file. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. I meant to do explorer dot. And somewhere in here, is it in the source folder? We have the solution. And I can do open with Visual Studio 2022. The first thing I'm going to do is just see if it compiles. And actually, while that's happening, another thing that I noticed on the pull request, it's a nice feature that GitHub has is we have GitHub Actions that we use to build like do a build and run the tests and everything. But if it's a first-time contributor to a project, it doesn't run it automatically for me, and that's just a protection that's there to make sure that someone isn't doing anything nefarious with our GitHub Actions, because they could have submitted a change to the GitHub workflow file as well, and then
right.
like started mining Bitcoin or something crazy with it. So I have, as a project maintainer, I can come in and approve and run that first run. So while we're going and running it locally, I'm also going to allow our continuous integration workflow to go and do the same thing over in GitHub Actions. And I'm going to build.
Fun fact for you, Dave. December 7th of this year will be the 10-year anniversary of this code going public as Angela Smith.
Oh, a whole decade.
Yeah.
It's true legacy code, isn't it? At that point.
I feel like I started this actually back in like 2004, 2005, because I was doing a lot of like there's a lot more prototyping going on in my life back in those days,
Mm-hmm.
and I had different versions of it that I was copying and pasting around, and yeah, eventually had a couple of other friendly gentlemen who started holding me accountable, a little bit more accountable with the code I was writing, and we put it out there. So okay,
So
so
this is our fun little uh, interactive documentation site. Uh, you can actually write code in here and then hit generate data, and it's going to generate some data for us if this all works like it used to. And it does. So that's
there we
cool.
go. That's great.
So like we can come in here and make changes to this class, add our own properties, and fill them for us. So it all seems to be working, which is a good first step. And I guess now that that's running, we'll go in and run the tests, see what happens there.
now running tests is some of the most exciting things to watch on
It
YouTube.
is. Absolutely. Okay, so that worked. Let's just, oh, we have some that are skipped. And that was some functionality that we didn't quite get sorted out for what we wanted it to do with plugins.
Okay.
But
So
this does seem to be working.
is there a test in there that represents filling properties on an object that inherits from a different base class?
Yeah, I feel like there was. Rick is going to be finding it. When testing for default values, I'm going to move the test explorer over. You know what? We have these test entities, and that might be the place to go look, because I think one of these somewhere has some concept of inheritance.
Right.
Right here.
Profile. Okay, so as long as profile is used in the test space, and it looks like it is 16 times, so as long as profile is getting filled properly, look at some of the tests on that guy, I guess.
Okay, so we're checking to make sure that the image, or that the custom thing that we entered gets filled. We're not
Right.
testing to see if the other properties have been filled. So
Yeah,
let's
let's
just
let's scroll
debug
through maybe some
this.
of those.
There might be
Yeah.
some other ones, but I'm just going to debug this one. So I'm curious.
Oh, because we could actually just check and see if the properties got filled, right? Because first
Yeah.
name, last name should be filled in. So, okay, so John Doe, what'd you get for values?
Okay, John, it's all filled. So that's good. Looks fine. Let's just verify that we did have a test that tests that scenario, though. Seems to, oh, this is all just testing the image URL. Is there anywhere else that this was used? I think it's all within this. Doesn't look like we explicitly test that anywhere. Let's see if there's anywhere else that we had some concept of inheritance. Here it is. Yes. Okay, so we have this concept of an application user and then application user base.
Mhm.
And let's just see where that's used. Or is it used anywhere?
I guess the application user hopefully is
Okay.
used.
So we're checking to make sure that the access failed count gets set within the range, and access failed
Mm.
count is a property on the base class.
Okay, and that's on the application user.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is some
So
old school mentality here. Hey, just checking 500 times to make sure that it when you set it up, it gives you the right range. I guess, right?
yeah, some of the, because we're relying on random inside of our tests, some of it was a little bit
Mm-hmm.
hard to test.
Right.
Um, so that's why I guess we were doing that. One of the requests we've had often is having the ability to provide a seed so that the data that gets produced is the same between runs,
Right,
which
which
would
would help with
alleviate this
test.
problem that we were trying to get around by just testing it a bunch.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, this all seems fine.
Yeah. Inheritance works. The generation works en masse out
Yeah.
in the website. The properties are being filled. I think everything seems to be working okay. Did we get a failed build there? Is that what I saw?
Oh, maybe. Let me check. I clicked away from it there too quickly. Oh, we did. Let's go have a look at that.
Okay.
That, I bet, is a problem with our GitHub workflow because it's going to be referencing the wrong version of .NET.
Core 3.1.
Okay, so that's something we need to change, and we can do that here. This time I am going to open it up in code. So here, what we want to do is set up .NET 6.0. And likewise here, we're going to want to do 6.0. And I'm just going to double check that I'm using the what the syntax is there for specifying versions. .6.0.x is what I'm going to say is the version. I'm not going to tie it to a specific minor release or whatever the third version of the release number is.
Revision. Major minor revision.
Yeah. We'll leave it at 6.0, but we'll let the last one float and use whatever. Okay, so we'll update that. .NET 6. Can I just push this now? Oh, I can't. How do I do that? When I'm working on a PR locally, I can't quite just go and make that change. What's the workflow for doing this?
Right. Would you have to put it into your own branch, then publish the branch?
Maybe? I'd like to just come in here and do it somehow if I can. So this pull request. Let's start by coming here.
Do you want to do a separate upgrade to the...
I'm going to commit this suggestion first. So we want that in there. And then we're going to go to the source branch for this. And we'll see if it lets me edit in here. The edit button. Let's see if it lets me commit directly to master. It does, okay. On this fork of our repo. Then that should just show up in the PR, I think. This may be kind of a weird way of going about this, but it should do the trick. Second K. All right.
Lunch breaks are good.
They are. I love lunch breaks. Okay. Let's head back to the PR, and I think it should have all those changes that we added to it. Nope. Get to the right place here. Pull requests. Why is it not there?
There we go.
This one. So we should see those extra commits of mine, and now the build is running, and it should be good to go after this.
And if you do have a handier workflow for managing those changes mid PR, then feel free to leave a comment in the notes below. Awesome. Getting ready to...
And in this build succeeding, I think we're good to rebase and merge. What do we want to do here? Yeah, rebase and merge looks good. Where are we at? It's building it. Didn't take that long, come on.
Yeah, this is one of those things that I've seen actually, like I have with our bakery site. Sometimes it comes back in like 47 seconds, and other times it takes 15 minutes. So I have no idea what I'm still kind of looking into that. I did have a couple suggestions from our friend Dylan, who works at GitHub, on things to check there. So definitely something to kind of dive in and I've got some more work to do there to understand that better. But I think it has something to do with like if you're building on, I might have mentioned it. If it's building on Linux or building on Windows, I think was his. Do you know what we're building on here? We have
We would have been Windows because we were targeting full framework, but we
right.
don't need to
Okay.
do that anymore. We could change it to run on Windows. That's kind of crazy that it's taken that long, but we got further than last time. I think it failed more quickly last time. There we go. Build finished. Now it's
Ayo.
running the tests. Bunch of warnings. Something weird going on with that UI. There we go. I think
There we are.
we're all
Excellent.
green. Rebase and merge. Comment.
Wonderful. Well,
Just like that?
that's just like that. Okay, so we've got some work to do to push a package out, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yeah.
So we will get on that, and that's awesome though to see this come together, and these community contributions make these things tick. Certainly, as we approach 10 years and 2 million installs, which is insane, we should probably just tend to this field a little bit more because it looks like there's some people getting some
Yes.
good use out of it. Hey, and if you're out there and you're using GenFu and you've got ideas, make a pull request.
We'll
with
look at it this time.
with we will look at it. We will get those changes in. Awesome. So I guess that's everything for today, Dave.
Yep.
You're off to lunch. I'm off to make lunch for other people, so it's perfect timing. Um, thanks everyone for joining us today on the ASP.NET Monsters, looking at GenFu. I'm James. That was Dave, and we will see you all next time on the next episode of the Monsters.
Bye.
Cheers.